Welcome to Paranormal Nightfall. Dark highways. The phantom truck.
It was one of those nights, when the darkness feels like a physical weight, pressing down on everything, as I drove along a deserted road. The road was flanked by deep drainage ditches on either side, the perfect trap for any unwary driver. The night was calm until I spotted headlights in my rearview mirror, a distant pinprick that steadily grew closer. An uneasiness settled in my stomach as the vehicle caught up to me at an alarming speed. The headlights were now only inches from my back bumper, their intense glare filling my rearview mirror. I could make out the outline of an old pickup truck. A sudden tap on my rear bumper sent a jolt through me, and my heart pounded in my chest. I tried to accelerate, putting distance between the truck and myself, but the relentless pickup kept up, tapping me again and again. My palms were sweaty on the steering wheel as panic began to set in. The road stretched on, offering no escape, no place to turn off, and my cell phone displayed no service. Mile after mile, the nightmare continued. The pickup would fall back slightly, only to surge forward and tap my bumper again. I could hear the grind of metal on metal, the creak of suspension, the roar of the ancient engine. Finally, the pickup swerved into the other lane, pulling up beside me. My breath caught in my throat as I glanced over, compelled to see the driver. Looking up from the rust-pockmarked door, I saw it was not human. A disfigured creature sat behind the wheel, its face a twisted parody of a smile, its eyes hollow and soulless. It raised a bony hand, beckoning me, calling me to join it. I looked away in horror, only to see that my wheels had left the surface of the road, and I was headed for one of the deep ditches. With a cry of terror, I yanked the steering wheel, my tires screeching as I returned to the roadway. The pickup pulled ahead, the disfigured creature's laughter echoing in my ears, and then it dissolved into a wisp, disappearing as though it had never been there. I knew, deep in my soul, that I had just escaped becoming the creature's passenger for eternity. The rest of the drive home was a blur. My hands shook, and my mind raced, replaying the events over and over. How many others had been drawn in by that cursed pickup? How many had become its eternal passengers? Life never quite returned to normal after that night. I found a new route home, avoiding that dark and lonely highway, but the memory of the creature's twisted face, its beckoning hand, lingered. Friends and family dismissed it as a hallucination or a dream, but I knew the truth. There are things out there, hidden on desolate roads and lonely places, waiting for the unwary. I still drive, but never alone at night, and never on deserted roads. The fear of what might be lurking behind me, waiting to tap my bumper and beckon me with its bony hand, will stay with me forever.
Highway 13.
I just finished my finals at college, and all that stood between me and a cozy Christmas break was a dark and lonely stretch of State Highway 13. As the miles ticked by and the city lights faded into the distance, I found myself surrounded by the ominous shadows of dense woodland. The night was as black as ink, and the only sounds were the hum of my car's engine and the occasional rustle of unseen creatures in the forest. An uneasy feeling gnawed at the back of my mind, but I shrugged it off as mere fatigue. As I drove deeper into the woods, a dark figure at the edge of the trees caught my eye. I shook it off as just a trick of my mind, making up things out of the tree's shadow. Once more a shadow at the edge of the forest appeared. My heart raced, but each time I tried to focus on it, the shadow slipped away, concealed by the darkness. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, but something primal within me sensed danger. The third time, it was impossible to ignore. A massive creature, with hunched shoulders and glowing red eyes, leapt out onto the road, and I slammed the brakes just in time. Frozen with terror, I stared into those fiery eyes, unable to look away. A big hairy beast, that must have been 7 feet tall. It looked like pictures of Bigfoot I had seen. Something I'd heard of but never truly believed in. Its breathing was deep and guttural, and its presence filled the night with an ancient and inexplicable fear. Minutes seemed like hours as we locked eyes. I could feel its raw power and knew, without a doubt, that it could tear me apart if it chose to. But it just stood there, watching, as if it were trying to communicate something beyond my comprehension. Slowly, the creature turned and lumbered off into the forest, its eyes never leaving mine. I was left trembling, my body soaked in cold sweat, as it was swallowed by the darkness. I vowed then and there never to take that road again. The encounter had shaken me to my core, and my previous beliefs had been shattered forever. Life went on, but the memory of that night lingered, haunting my dreams and casting a shadow over my waking hours. Friends and family noticed the change but could never truly understand. How could they? That lonely highway had become a border between two worlds, one of simple, everyday reality, and another of unspeakable mysteries lurking just beyond our sight. Every so often, I would find myself staring into the darkness, wondering what else might be hidden out there and knowing that some things are better left undiscovered.
The orb.
I was driving down a dark stretch of country highway, the monotony of the road broken only by the sound of my tires on the roadway. The night was quiet, the world seemingly asleep, save for the hum of my car's engine. Suddenly, a bright light appeared in my rearview mirror. At first, I thought it was another car, but the light was too bright, too pure, like a shard of daylight piercing the night. It seemed to be following me, getting closer and closer, yet never overtaking. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my heart racing, unsure of what to do. The light seemed to have a life of its own, dancing and flickering as it pursued me. I tried to shake it off, speeding up, then slowing down, but it stayed with me, a relentless, unexplainable presence. Minutes turned into an eternity as the light continued its pursuit. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished. I glanced around, trying to make sense of what had just happened, but the road was empty, the world plunged back into darkness. I exhaled, my body trembling, thinking the ordeal was over. But then, without warning, my car was bathed in a bright glow from above. The engine sputtered and died, the headlights blinked out, and the dashboard lights began to flicker on and off. I was paralyzed with fear, cold sweat forming on my forehead, trapped in my motionless car, as the light hovered above me. It was an orb, pulsating with energy, sending out bursts of different colored lights as if scanning me and my vehicle. I could feel it probing, analyzing, something trying to understand what I was, what I represented. The air was thick with static, my hair standing on end, my skin tingling. The orb continued its examination, its lights dancing and swirling, a mesmerizing, terrifying ballet. I wanted to look away, to close my eyes and pretend it wasn't happening, but I couldn't. I was drawn to it, captivated and horrified in equal measure. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it was over. The orb shot up into the sky, disappearing into the night. My car's engine roared back to life, the headlights coming on, the dashboard returning to normal. I sat there for a moment, trying to comprehend what had just happened. Had it been real? Had I imagined it? I knew I hadn't. The terror, the awe, the sense of being in the presence of something beyond understanding, was all too real. With shaking hands, I put the car in gear and continued on, the dark highway stretching out before me. But I was no longer alone. The memory of the encounter, the knowledge of what I had seen, would stay with me, a haunting reminder of the unknown that lurks just beyond our perception. I drove on, rattled to my core, knowing that I had been touched by something extraordinary, something inexplicable. When I made it home, I couldn't sleep, thinking only of the encounter. The world was no longer as simple as it had been, and I was forever changed.